I'm Attila Horvath.
And I am Derek Sturgeon. Welcome to the 5th edition of Pauline Johnson's PJ Pulse.
In our first story for our program tonight, we are going to look back in April from the 7th to the 9th to have an idea as to what happened in the Dracula production. As part of the cast of Dracula, portraying the character of Dracula, and working with the people involved in the production, I realized the time, the commitment, the energy, and the organization that was required to make the production a success. I felt the drama production of Dracula utilized all these characteristics and definitely contributed to the success of the production.
I can relate to that. I got to see the last production of the drama Dracula. I thought it was excellent. I had the luxury of seeing the finished product, though. There must have been a lot of hard work that went into this production. What exactly did it take?
Well, Derek, to give you and our viewers some insight into the many different aspects of the Dracula drama, Jeremy Crawford went to a rehearsal to find out.
My name's Jeremy Crawford. I'm from a marketing class at Pauline Johnson Collegiate, and right now I have a few people involved with the play Dracula, and right now I have with me Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott's involved with special effects, and I'm just going to ask Mr. Scott a few questions. What special effects are going to be seen in the play?
Actually, there'll be quite a number of special effects in the play. There'll be bats flying around. There'll be objects moving seemingly by themselves. There are going to be mirrors breaking, special sound effects. There's quite a number of special effects.
And where did you find most of the materials used in the play?
Well, mostly this is a low-budget production, so we've been scrounging quite a bit. We've picked up some things from hardware stores and sewn together bats out of cloth and wood and that kind of thing. The sound effects came on a tape with the play itself, but we found they were not very good, so we're going to have to be doing some of the sound effects on our own in the back.
And how did you learn how to set up for the special effects?
Well, this time around, we've done a number of plays in the past, and normally it's been experimental. But this one, the play itself came with a listing of special effects in it and quite detailed examples of how to set them up. Now, they don't all lend themselves to our stage, but it's been very good that way. It's been easier.
What do you think is going to be the best special effect in the play?
Well, I hope they're all good. The bats have been kind of interesting for the stage crew. We've got, actually, there are going to be 2 bats, although they will be the same bat in the end. So it's going to be a fair challenge to get it to look like it's flying around the stage without seeing any wires or anything.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scott. For my second guest, I have Mrs. Rung, who is the producer of the play. Mrs. Rung, what is involved in producing the play Dracula?
Well, a producer starts with an empty stage and coordinates all aspects of the production till its completion. A producer is required to pull together a cast, a staff of technical people, crew members, create a budget, get that budget approved, conduct meetings, act as a chairman. I feel I'm the conscience of everybody in the technical crew. I see that all the jobs get done, and hopefully on time, and again, just pull it together until completion.
Right. How long did it take to get everybody together to make the play?
Well, we had our first production meeting in September of this past year and started planning the details that were needed, but we really didn't get down to the crunch of it until about January.
How many cast members are in the play, including the staff involved?
We have a small cast. There are 9 members of the cast itself, but we have 20 teachers and about 70 students backstage putting it all together.
What is the hardest part of your job?
Oh, I guess it's pushing everybody to get their jobs done on time.
What is the basic storyline of the play?
Well, this is considered one of the great mysteries of all times. It's the story of young Lucy Seward, whose father is a doctor in charge of an English sanitarium, and Lucy has a mysterious illness that is diagnosed by a visiting specialist as perhaps the effect of a vampire bite. Vampire apparently comes around at night and sucks the blood of its victims, and the story deals with how this is happening to Lucy and who perhaps is doing it to her.
Okay. Where did the money come from to fund the play?
We work to a fairly tight budget, and the budget is approved by our Pauline Johnson Students' Council. They advance us the money so that we can buy sets and costumes, makeup, and so on, and then they get the revenue from the ticket sales.
How many people do you expect to attend the play?
I'd like to think that there'd be 400 or 500 every night, but we're looking optimistically at about 250 per performance.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rung. For my third guest, I have Ms. Wong, who is in charge of props, along with Ms. Entignap. What props are going to be used in the play?
Well, we have a good number of props. The play takes place in Victorian times, so we're looking at about 150 years ago. A lot of the things, it's an entirely different style of furniture from today, so a lot of the things are kind of hard to find. Some of the more interesting props, we have some really neat things that are traditionally known as objects that keep away evil. And some of those things are a rosary, yeah, two large crucifixes, we're talking about 6 inches, wolfsbane, which was an herb that was supposed to keep away vampires, of course, a large sledgehammer, and a stake, an iron stake about 18 inches long. Something else that is really neat that we've had to collect, which it's been very easy to find them, but they're going to be used in an interesting way, are 3 lamp chimneys from oil lamps. They're going to be used by the actors on stage to howl through, to imitate the howling of wolves. So it's actually kind of neat finding all these things.
Okay. Who is responsible for the props?
Well, Mrs. Entignap and myself, and we have a group of students who are working with us, about 8 students, I think. And also Mrs. Edwards, another teacher, has just volunteered to help us find the smaller things that we're looking for now.
What is the expense of the props?
Well, the expense has been quite low. We've been mainly borrowing the pieces of furniture from family, from other teachers, from friends, of just getting them wherever we can. We may have to go to secondhand stores to get a couple of the larger items. We're having trouble getting a large Victorian-looking couch. That's one thing. This is very nice furniture, rather expensive, and people don't really, they're kind of hesitant about loaning it to us, some pieces.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wong. With me now I have Miss Anderson, who is the director of the play. Miss Anderson, what is involved with directing the play?
The director is really, I suppose, the creative motivation behind a play. It's the director who chooses the play to do. It's the director who decides what the look of the play should be, where the actors should sit and stand, how they should say their lines. Really, I suppose, is almost the energy of the production. The director is responsible for the look of the production and the way it looks on stage and the way everything is done.
How many other PJ productions have you directed?
Before the stage was renovated and we used to put on productions in room 248, I used to do a 1-act play or a 2-act play every year. So in the past, we've done The Brick and the Rose. We've done a series of 1-act plays, a 1-act play festival. We did, I can't remember now. I co-directed Bye Bye Birdie. I helped with makeup on Pajama Game, and that's about my directing experience in the school.
What kind of commitment is involved with being director?
A lot of hours. You have to decide ahead of time, read the script. You have to go over the script and decide what it needs to look like, make notes on the script before you even do anything. You have to work with the other people in the production crew in planning what the whole thing should look like, even before the auditions are held for the actors. In a sense, you're responsible for the auditions as well, and for pretty well choosing the actors who are going to do the various roles. After that, of course, it's a lot of hours after school and getting it onto the stage properly. I would say mostly hours and energy.
In comparison to previous productions, do you think the rehearsals are running smoothly with this production now?
I think so. We're in that stage of the rehearsals about a week and a half before we open where we're always feeling a little panicky and we're running around saying, oh, are we really going to be ready? But if I think back to the productions that we've done in the past, we have always been at this stage a week and a half before we present, and we have always been ready. So I would say, yes, that the rehearsals are going smoothly and that we're on track. This has been a good cast to work with. They're a small cast, and they're very enthusiastic, and yes, I think we'll be ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Anderson.
And the winner is...
On Friday, May 11th, Pauline Johnson had held their Students' Council elections for the following year. But first, PJ Pulse would like to acknowledge and thank those members of council this year. Scott Knipe as president, Sean Nash as first vice, Ed Van Sickle as second vice, Terry Palmatier as secretary, and Brent Burbridge as treasurer. These people, along with the rest of council and the teacher supervisors, made this year most enjoyable.
But aside from this, we must recognize those individuals who will represent Pauline Johnson Students' Council next year. These people include Heather Perrant as president, Derek Sturgeon as first vice president, Julie Ross as second vice president. In addition, we would like to recognize Laura Mano, who will be our secretary, Paul Appel, who will be our treasurer, and we would like to congratulate these individuals on their position and wish them the best in the following year.
Our next story deals with the curling season, which ended this past March. Although our team did not place first in the city, we marked our success on knowledge and skills and knowledge of the sport. Naman Kreshi has more with Mr. Bob Bell, the coach of the curling team.
Hello, I'm Naman Kreshi with one of the staff members of Pauline Johnson, Mr. Bell. He's also the curling coach. Mr. Bell, how successful have our teams been this year?
I think, Noman, that the teams have been relatively successful this year. Curling is a fairly new sport at Pauline Johnson, and often our success depends on how many players we have back with experience, because we find that most students at Pauline Johnson really don't have much experience with curling. In fact, their first contact with the game usually comes as a result of participating in the sport in a physical education class. And so, as a result, we're dealing with players who are usually quite inexperienced. And our success depends on whether we have these people at the school for 2 or 3 years. We find that with 1 or 2 years experience, they will improve considerably.
How successful have our curling teams been this year?
Here, the girls' team was relatively new. In fact, I believe only one of our 4 curlers had any previous experience, and so as a result of this, they missed the playoffs. The boys' team, on the other hand, where we did have some experienced curlers, was successful in reaching the semifinals, and they curled very well in the semifinals and were defeated by a very, very strong BCI team that had finished in first place.
Where do you practice?
Most of our practicing is done at the Brantford Golf and Country Club, and I think we're very fortunate that they have made the ice available there for student curling and have been, I think, very cooperative in allowing us ice time so that we can take the students there to practice.
How long is the curling season?
Season usually begins at the end of October, 1st of November, and we have approximately 2 or 3 weeks where we have some practice time, and we try and get the students who are interested to come out and try out for the team. The actual games begin in November, and we run, they play 5 games before Christmas, and then there are 5 more games that we play after Christmas. And in addition to that, there are the playoffs that follow. So the season actually ends for our team somewhere at the end of February, early March.
Do you have any last words concerning curling?
I think that curling as a sport at Pauline Johnson has certainly in recent years become a very popular sport. We find that more and more students are becoming interested, primarily because of their contact in phys ed classes, and we have had more of them who have been coming out to try out for the teams. I think what is most interesting is, even though that the large majority of them are inexperienced, we're finding that if they do, in fact, or if they are successful in making the curling team, many of them have continued on and have curled after they've left school. And I think that's really our primary objective, to teach them the game and to provide them with an activity that they can continue with until they're 90 years old. So in that sense, we're really satisfied.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bell, for your time. This is Naman Qureshi saying so long.
On May 31st, Pauline Johnson is going to have its traditional picnic day, which has been effective since 1983 as part of Fitness Week. The staff and students of PJ look forward to this event, not only for a day off school, but a day to enjoy the inter-school competition it presents.
Our last story tonight deals with the band exchange, which took place last year. Our exchange took Pauline Johnson's band to British Columbia, which included new experiences, a mountain or two, and enjoyable learning. With Mr. Paul Raymond as busy as he is, and who teaches music at Pauline Johnson, and Paul Appel, who is also a busy student of music, we were lucky to get this footage. Naman Qureshi has this story.
Okay, 1, 2.
How are you doing?
Hi, Mr. Raymond. Hi, Paul. How's
Hi,
it going?
Mark. Good, thanks.
Sorry to disturb you, but I was wondering if I could ask you some questions on the recent band exchange.
No problem. I heard you were coming, so fire away.
All right, about the band exchange, where did PJ go last year?
Well, last year the Pauline Johnson Collegiate Concert Band and Stage Band went to British Columbia for a change.
How did the idea of the band exchange come about?
Well, the idea came about, a man with a former student of Pauline Johnson keeping contact with me, who, by the way, is the music teacher where we went. And the name of the place was Rosslyn, BC, which is about 6 miles straight up from Trail into the mountains. And it came about through him badgering me, and finally he gave in and said, yep, let's do it. So that's how it came about.
Okay, how was the trip financed?
Many different ways, man. First of all, the students contributed themselves out of their own pockets. Student Council gave us a pretty generous grant. We were very fortunate to qualify for an open house grant, which totally paid for the transportation for 25 of the students to go. And finally, I believe that we did just a little bit of fundraising ourselves, such as bandathon, etc., and it all totaled up, and it got us there and back.
Paul, could you give us some highlights of your stay in Rossland?
Well, Mom, there's first a few things I'd like to, say about the trip. We flew out in between semesters. We ended up with 5 full days in BC. There was 35 students that went, including myself, and 3 chaperones that went along as well. The highlights of the trip, well, there were quite a few, actually, that came around that they had set up for us. The Roslyn students had set up a booklet. An itinerary was with it. History of Roslyn, the town itself, was presented to us. One of the first places that we went was the Kootenay Dam electrical system. That sort of developed through the gold rush times, actually, and that gave a start to the Roslyn itself. There was an industry tour, Cominco Industry in Roslyn, that we took a tour of. I remember that it was an employer of 70% of the population of Roslyn. Well, at least a couple thousand people were employed by this Cominco. Cominco was a zinc, lead smeltering industry, and they produced several other minerals as well. We visited Ainsworth Hot Springs, which goes back in history as well, into the 1800s. It was discovered. You could swim out in winter. That's what we did. We put on our bathing suits and went outside in the warm mineral water and went swimming outside. It was great fun. Along the recreational lines, we went to Red Mountain, top quality ski resort. students had lots of fun there. They, you know, it's not skiing that was the hard thing. It was, you know, rolling down the hills after a fall, you know, and then people, you know, breaking a couple fingers here and there, stuff. We went to a mining museum, and we'd had a dance at one of the first miners' hall. There was a mass concert at Roslyn Secondary High School. Both bands performed with the concert and stage bands. And there was a large emphasis on family activities. Each student from PJ spent some time with the host family they were with. I had time to do some skidooing, which I've never done before in Roslyn. And, you know, several other activities took place when we had the free time with the families.
Sounds really interesting. Since this was an exchange, Mr. Raymond, when did the Roslyn Band come to Brantford?
Actually, they came in the last week of April, and the weather was good, and it coincided with our education week.
Paul, what did the Roslyn students do while they were here?
Lots. There's lots that the students did. The nicest thing I feel that took place was the breakfast at the Quality Inn across the road. The mayor of the city was there, Mr. Dean was there, administration from the school and the Board of Education were there. At this meeting, they gave speeches to the students of Roslyn, you know, how glad they were to come to Brantford and what they would expect of their trip here. There was an information book that was passed out at this breakfast. This book that was produced by the geography department at PJ. Several students took part in the making of this, which provided an itinerary and a history of Brantford. So there was a starting point to the return visit for the Roslyn students. There was a concern about class time. There was only one full day that we got to spend with our billets, and that was the day to Toronto. On this day, from what I can remember, we went to the CN Tower. We were allowed so much time there, went up and down, and you know, we went to the tour of the universe at the base of the CN Tower. That was a first for me. Went on a walking tour of Toronto. You know, to see the faces of the Roslyn students was really something else. They were really amazed with such a large city as Toronto. And to finish off the day, there was a dinner at the Organ Grinder. It was a restaurant where there was a fellow that played a large theater organ, you know. The students of Roslyn returned to Toronto a few days later. They went to see the Toronto Zoo, a new experience for them, and they went to the Ontario Science Centre. There's, to them, you know, I heard, you know, especially my billet say there's no building that sort of size in Roslyn, so that much walking, that much to see was quite an experience again for the students. Roslyn went to Niagara Falls for a day. They took in all the various sites there. They went on the Spanish aero cars. They went on the Maid of the Mist. They went to see one of the 7 wonders of the world, Niagara Falls. They've seen an IMAX film presented about Niagara Falls. Another new experience. They'd have no such thing as an IMAX film along the lines of what's at Ontario Place. They went to Welland Canal, seen a lock system. Probably for most of the students, that's another first. And one of the last things they did in Niagara Falls was toured Fort Niagara on the Lake, near Niagara on the Lake, just walking distance from there. Maybe another new experience for the students as well. And as well as all the recreational and historical information they'd be receiving about Brantford and the surrounding area, the Golden Horseshoe. They performed several concerts at PJ and FC Bodley. They were the 2 schools that they performed concerts at.
The Roslyn students must have been very busy. How do you feel about this experience?
I've been on a few exchanges now. I think they're excellent. I recommend it for anyone that has a chance to go on any sort of an exchange to do so. They're very, very beneficial. I mean, when I was with my host family, I looked out of their front window and what did I see but mountains, mountains of BC. You go outside and the air's different. Everywhere you look, there was mountains to be seen. Different atmosphere, and it was like a village. It's secluded. It's like a satellite city of trail. That's what I learned, along with Nelson, which was a bit bigger in population, where a few shows were in that. To see what the students did and how they responded to what they know as life, it was something that was a change for myself, and I'm sure for all the students here that participated on the exchange. One last thing I'd like to mention about my host family that I found really special was that I don't have any brothers or sisters. So during my stay, I had the experience of hanging around my billets' brothers and sisters, which was another new experience.
Mr. Raymond, how do you think the Ontario students felt about your stay in Rossland?
Well, man, that's a big question. Both bands got a great deal out of this exchange. You can appreciate the British Columbia kids that came to Ontario, and they're used to a remote, isolated community. And to land in Ontario, first of all, to come into Brantford, to them is a tremendously large city. We think of Brantford as a medium-sized city, and they have never seen anything like that. And then, of course, you can appreciate them going to Toronto and appreciating the size of Toronto. Our students, when they went to British Columbia, saw a lot of territory for the first time. We flew, and a lot of students have never flown before in their life. So we flew. They saw a little bit of Calgary when we put down, and then from there we went into Vancouver, which is a new experience. And we flew from Toronto to Vancouver on a large jet, and then we had to transfer into a small turboplane from Vancouver to get down in the Castlegar. And the reason for this is that Castlegar, where we landed, is a smaller airport than our own Brantford airport. So we kind of flew down through the mountains, and as a matter of fact, the peaks were above us most of the time, and it was very foggy. And we sort of gyrated downwards until we finally saw this little airport, and there's where we landed. And for our students, that was a very new experience, and for our students to see the mountains for the first time, you have to appreciate the fact that in their lifetime, perhaps a lot of our students will never see those mountains again. So culturally, it was a great experience for the students. Musically, it was fun. Historically, they saw a new part of the country, a part of Canadian history that they perhaps would not experience at any other time of their life. So when you look at appreciating the Ontario kids going to British Columbia and the British Columbia students coming to Ontario and realizing, experiencing those differences. The ironic thing about the whole thing is there was a bunch of kids out there meeting with a bunch of kids from Ontario, which shared together, and really when it came right down to it, they were really no different. Just a lot of kids had a wonderful time. It was a tremendously successful exchange, and certainly we should look forward to doing those things in the future.
We would like to conclude tonight's show by mentioning a few congratulations and a couple sad goodbyes. Congratulations to Mr. Wibberley, who's teaching in PJ's business department. He'll be being transferred to North Park as vice principal. Congratulations to Mr. Halley, who will be transferred to BCI as their vice principal. Congratulations to Miss Enticknap. Our vice principal right now this year will be moving to principal at PJ, and to our principal, Mr. Dean, who's being transferred to North Park.
Well, thank you for joining us here on PJ Pulse, and we hope it was both informative and interesting. I'm Attila Horvath.
And I'm Derek Sturgeon.
Good night.
Good night.